What we want, no, what we need is fiscal and policy space. Fiscal and policy space to achieve sustainable development, to be nimble, to adapt, and to innovate in ways that allow us to be true and faithful to the task of bringing prosperity to our people.
What's up, guys? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Mottley just said what every small nation has been thinking for decades, and she did it on the world's biggest stage. Today we are breaking down a speech that completely exposed how the global financial system is rigged against the Caribbean and the developing world. So let's watch this powerful speech until the end, and then I'll come back with my comments. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.
Challenges. That's why I ask all the time, who sees us and who hears us? We continue to be confronted by problems of blacklisting, which pale into insignificance when compared to climate change, but which destroy our financial sector. The illicit flow of weapons, such that the ease with which people can go into public spaces and shoot and kill others is now regarded as just another item on the news because we promote profit in the manufacture and trade of guns and weapons, of non-communicable diseases that strike down our people in the most insidious of ways because we allow diets that promote the prosperity of a few multinational corporations to become the norm of the day with the food that we eat and the lives that we live. And in the case within our own community, Belize and Guyana continue to face challenges to their territorial integrity. I suppose people feel that because we have talked so long about Belize and Guyana and Cuba, that we can continue to talk about climate change and these other things, and that it is okay for it to be another tick on a UN General Assembly speech. These are all threats to our stability, to the people's stability in our lands. But you know, since last we met, there are other instances and circumstances, not of our making, that may yet destabilize us. And we say it over and over, but we ask who is listening. And you know, we don't come with tales of woe only. The Caribbean has produced excellence. It really has. Nobel laureates, sportsmen who have excelled and are the best in the world of their type, artists, the best in the world of their type, leaders who have inspired previous generations and current generations. We don't come here as a proud people asking for handouts. We don't want and will not be mendicant. What we want, no, what we need is fiscal and policy space. Fiscal and policy space to achieve sustainable development, to be nimble, to adapt, and to innovate in ways that allow us to be true and faithful to the task of bringing prosperity to our people, or as in the theme of this General Assembly, to eradicate poverty, to educate our people, to include all such that there's not some outside and some inside. We want an international order equally that recognizes that there must be different policy prescriptions to suit the circumstances that we all have. And we can still be friends, small and large, north and south, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, all different races, all genders. An equitable and just international order that is truly built on the principles of justice and fairness for all and not just for some. A United Nations that recognizes that as 74 years old we must be able to have difficult conversations as mature people and solve them. Many in the developing world were persuaded or required to abandon policies that were designed for the majority of our population to be transformed. And those policies were fashioned to adopt a consensus that was settled in Washington, D.C. and named thereafter. And that ultimately, regrettably, was about the consolidation of wealth in the hands of a very few. And that's why we have seen the growing inequality that we have seen in the world over the last few decades. That is why too many people over the world have become cynical about governments and about the benefits that they can bring to them. The fueling of the greed of a few threatens to undermine what little gains we have made since independence. And we judge ourselves harshly because independence is a recent phenomenon for us. Others who have taken 150 years to get where they have gotten are still stumbling and falling. And you want to judge those who have had less than 50 or 60 years to operate in a world that has not been made in their image and that does not reflect their interests. This is the fate, my friends, of simply too many. And Mr. President, despite our small sizes, the 14 countries of the Caribbean community have been able to play leadership roles of international import. I can't stand here today without talking about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that has become the smallest nation of the world ever to be elected to the Security Council to sit on it. We are proud of them. In addition, and I want to speak to this, because when CARICOM was confronted with the unfolding situation in Venezuela, I accompanied the then chairman of CARICOM, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, to meet in this building with the UN Secretary General in January of this year. And we met with many delegations, and some said we were wasting our time, and some said the time for talk was already over. And we said then, as we say almost 9 months later, the time for dialogue, the time for talk, my friends, can never be over in a world that wants peace and prosperity. We don't take sides, but what we know is that you cannot propel war over dialogue. The people of Venezuela must be allowed to decide their own future in accordance with the principles of the United Nations Charter. Principles of non-intervention, non-interference, prohibition of the threat or use of force, respect for the rule of law, human rights, and democracy. It is regrettable that other multilateral organizations have not followed their own charters. And that is what makes the actions of our Secretary General of the UN more laudable, for refusing to breach his own charter and take actions even though member states have hurled into the recognition of those unelected. Our Caribbean Sea must remain a zone of peace, and for that we shall fight. Mr. President, I speak plainly and without fear, because from independence, Barbados' foreign policy has been premised on the simple principle of friends of all, satellites of none. Barbados, therefore, has always remained and will remain proud to have Cuba as a treasured friend.
Welcome back, guys. This was a powerful message because it focused on issues that many people don't normally think about. One thing I found interesting is how the discussion shifts the conversation away from individual countries towards global systems. Because when people hear about economic struggles in developing nations, the assumption is often that problems are entirely local. But the argument being made here is that many of these challenges are connected to discussions made far beyond borders of the Caribbean. Take financial access, for example. Most people don't spend much time thinking about how international banking works until maybe they realize that access to global financial networks can affect investment, trade, business growth, and everyday transactions. For small nations, being isolated from those systems can create obstacles that are difficult to overcome. The climate issue is another important point that deserves a lot of attention. The Caribbean contributes a very small percentage of global emissions, yet it remains one of the regions most vulnerable to hurricanes, coastal erosions, flooding, and rising sea levels. That's why leaders from the region often frame climate change not just as an environmental issue, but as an economic issue and a development issue. Because when a major storm hits a small island nation, the damage can set back years of progress almost overnight. The conversation around crime and illegal weapon is also very important. One reality that often gets overlooked is that many Caribbean countries are dealing with weapons that are manufactured elsewhere and they find their way into the region through international trafficking networks. That creates challenges that cannot be solved by any one country acting alone. It requires cooperation, stronger enforcement, and a recognition that crime has become increasingly global. I also think that the discussion about health deserves more attention. Across the world, countries are facing growing rates of lifestyle related illnesses. What makes this conversation interesting is the argument that health outcomes are influenced not only by personal choices but by larger economic and corporate systems that shape what people consume every day. Whether people agree or maybe disagree with that argument, it's a discussion worth having because public health affects productivity, healthcare costs, and the general quality of life. What I appreciated most about this speech was that it wasn't presented as a request for sympathy. It was presented as a call for fairness. The message was not, feel sorry for us. The message was recognize the realities we face and create systems that allow small nations a fair chance to succeed. And honestly, that's a conversation that extends far beyond the Caribbean because around the world, many small countries face similar challenges. They are affected by decisions made by the larger economies. They are vulnerable to global market shifts. And they usually have limited influence despite being affected by the consequences. Another thing I took away from this is the importance of leadership that speaks with clarity. Whether people agree with every point or not, there is value in leaders who are willing to address difficult topics directly and bring attention to issues that might otherwise be ignored. The Caribbean is often viewed through the lens of tourism, beaches, and the environment. But speeches like this remind people that the region is also dealing with serious economic, environmental, and social challenges that deserve international attention. So, as I said, this is not about Barbados or Caribbean. It's a speech about how smaller nations navigate a world where power, wealth, and influence are usually concentrated elsewhere. And that's why messages like this resonate with so many people because, regardless of where you are from, most people understand the desire for fairness, opportunity, and the ability to determine their own future. So, thank you so much for watching until the end. If you have not yet subscribed, kindly subscribe. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and share. See you guys in the next reaction. Thank you.